Hey there, folks. It's been a while since I've done a Let's Talk video. Not since my thoughts on the original Mass Effect 3 endings. Of course, since then they've been revamped and they're still not great. Better, but yeah. Anyway, I want to start getting into more of the Let's Talk videos because I've got opinions on just about everything, and I figure I'll start with something like this. This is a video pertaining to mercenaries in specifically in Mountain Blade with Fire and Sword. Mercenaries are a more simple business in Warband. They're very expensive, and I personally don't think they're worth it. They're just way too expensive. It's much, much, much better to just use national recruits and train them up to be the awesome units. Now, in Fire and Sword, you really have to rely on mercenaries. And it makes looting villages much easier because the people you get from villages are crap and they don't really turn into anything. So you're encouraged to loot and hire mercenaries instead. There's the normal mercenaries that are found in bars, taverns, what have you. They're cheap labor, cheap to upkeep, cheap to buy. They come in several different flavors, and they make for good garrison fodder. It's cheaper to throw some cheap ass mercenary musketeers in a castle than it is to use some captured Dejuras or something like that you find, because cavalry in a garrison are nowhere near as good. So just use mercs, pikemen, musketeers, whatever. Um, Now instead of the national recruits that you get in Warband, in this one there's mercenary camps, 5 different ones that pertain to the different nations. You can get different flavors of mercenaries. And with those 5 different nations comes 5 different, at least slightly different skill sets, definitely different equipment sets. Some are better than others, some are way worse than others. There's a few that I think are clear cut winners, but I guess I should also preface this. And by the way, ignore the stats. Um, I use the export feature to alter my stats in a text file so I can get around the map quicker, get money, as you can notice by the money down here, etc. And just to make sure I didn't get beat up along the way, and yada yada yada. And I just lost track of what I was talking about. Um, so what I'm going to do in this video is kind of outline the strengths and weaknesses of each nation's troops. With each mercenary camp, you can choose to get that nation's infantry, riflemen, or cavalry. All different builds and stuff like that. So let's start and take a look. What we'll do is I'll take a look at the fresh recruits, and then I have another save file set up where everyone is at elite status, and excuse me, ugh. Everyone's elite status, and everybody makes a considerable jump. What's weird is that some units, which I'll point out if I remember them, actually lose some stats for some reason as they gain level, and it kind of bounces out in the end. There's one freakish incident I'll be sure I'll point out. Well, without further ado, let's get started. Um, First, we have Cossack infantry. I'm trying to show off their stats for each one. Don't bother with Cossack infantry. They have a good amount of iron flesh. Other than that, for infantry, their skills are very weak. Very little power strike. And despite how it looks, that is chainmail underneath that robe thing they're wearing. And that is an armored hat, but they still have the weakest armor. And for not having a good two-handed weapon, they have no shield whatsoever. There's only one other nation that doesn't use shields, but they can at least use halberds. And they have heavier armor, so that's excusable. Do not use Cossack infantry. It's not worth it. Even if you're desperate, just get something else. Get people from the pub or something. Just don't bother with Cossack infantry, please. And okay, that's enough of that one. Worst infantry in the game. Moving on. Tadar infantry. Um, they're weak. Their skill sets are shit. They have no iron flesh. they're quicker on their feet. That's about it. Now, the only thing you should not pay attention to are attributes. Those are randomized from game to game, as far as I understand. They balance out more as they become elite, but yeah. So this guy suffers from having no iron flesh and low strength, so meaning low hit points. I would avoid these guys too. If you're desperate and have to choose between the two, take Tadars. They have slightly better armor, and they are one of two nations that have steel shield, which at least have a chance of stopping a bullet, even without shield skill. Against good firearms, it'll still really help. It has high resistance, but it's better than nothing. You can do much better. I would probably go with people from the bar. Moving on. Polish infantry. Now we're starting to get to good infantry. Now, their stats aren't fantastic. They have good athletics skill. Iron Flesh is meh. Decent power strike. Okay melee skills. Their big thing is they do have heavy armor. Um, One thing to consider with them is I have them with Hussar Mail right now, which gives excellent body protection. But for a little bit cheaper, you can get a pikeman uniform instead, which offers less body protection, but it offers superior leg protection. At least from what if the same holds true for NPCs as it does for players. Pikeman uniforms have excellent leg armor. Um, but because of the heavy armor, they're even with higher athletics, they're still not that fast. Um, they have good sabers they can use, and they can use shields, but it's only simple shields, not steel. They make decent infantry. I would use them over the other two, even without the steel shield. But yeah, moving on, getting to better, at least in my opinion, infantry. Swedish infantry. Well, European, but they're Swedish. Um, Again, same sort of stats as the Polish. Higher weapon master and higher weapon skills in general make them better just hitting things. They have the heavy half armor and Reiter helmets. They can upgrade over the Reiter gauntlets, just called armor gauntlets. Very good, very good. They're the only nation that gets halberds, which is a nice mix between having the pike for anti cavalry or a saber for anti everything else. The halberd seems to work great even in sieges and stuff like that. And even without the shield, they suffer a bit, but they make up for it with their excellent weapon of choice and their heavy armor. Highly recommended. Moving on to what I think is the best infantry, the Muscovites. The Muscovites have steel shields, good armor, very, very high iron flesh. These guys are tough. Excellent skills. They're slow, but that's okay. You want to use them as your main shield wall to advance it. Again, steel shields, they have an excellent club. It's very short range. However, this can prove to be very useful in some instances since my dog's barking downstairs. Um, as anybody that plays Mountain Blade is well aware of, it's the tip of a weapon that does the most damage. So when you get getting closer, you don't do as much damage, and sometimes you just like bounce off altogether when you're trying to make the hit. Given the short range of weapons like axes and maces, you suffer from this way less often. Sure, you don't have reach, but when you're at the top of a ladder in a siege, and all of a sudden the pikemen can't hit you very well, and you're just bashing the shit out of them with your little mace, yeah. With their toughness and their steel shields, despite the lack of shield skill, they're pretty good at catching bullets and surviving charges. Highly recommended. I would use Muscovite infantry over any other infantry. It'd be nice to mix them in with the European infantry just to add a little punch. But if you're just going to use one, use these guys, and they only get better. Okay, that's enough of the infantry. Let's move on to riflemen. And I realize this is probably a little boring. If you have no interest in Mountain Blade, you probably should have just hit back on the video a long time ago. But if you're interested in learning more about the game and seeing all my findings and stuff like that, this could save you a little trouble because I was always wondering what the best ones were. And now I know pretty much. Now, for the riflemen, we're going to arguably start with the best ones. We're going to start with the Cossacks. Now, traditionally, the Cossacks were riflemen. They're especially excellent cavalry gunmen. They were known for being having excellent light cavalry, etc. They'd run circles around people and gun them down. That's pretty much how it worked. Um, Good iron flesh skill. Wonderful firearm skill. I think they have the best natural firearm skill starting off. They have 7 shooting from horseback, which means they'll pretty much suffer no penalty when on horseback. Because in the Mountain Blade games, when using a ranged weapon on a moving horse, if you're standing still, you have no penalty. But if you're moving on a horse, you suffer all sorts of penalties. Now, the higher your shooting from horseback skill is, the less you suffer from these penalties. So these guys suffer very little from it. However, this is the one big time when, as they raise level, this actually goes down. Before I got them to elite, I would have recommended putting them on horseback and giving them Miquelete carbines, but I won't do that now because, especially now since I realize that these guys can equip the best non-player gun in the game, which is the good Miquelete musket. It's as close to a sniper rifle as your NPCs are going to get. Keep these guys on the very back line. They will tear shit up. Super recommended. Don't have them participate in charges; they'll get murdered. But if you keep them on the back line as your last resort, they're going to do some damage. Highly, highly recommended. Moving on. I have him on a horse. Ignore that. I forgot to take it off. Tatar riflemen. The the only nation that prefers using bows over firearms, and this their stats are shit. Their stats are shit. They turn out to be a lot better, but it's hard for me to recommend using bows on the same line as riflemen. Um, it's not that the bow can't be good. It's more accurate, and with higher power draw, it can do more damage. However, if they share the same line as the riflemen, they're going to go through all of their arrows before the musketeers get through 6 volleys, roughly. And they're just going to be standing there doing nothing. It's going to be awkward to just have them just sit there and wait until all your guys are done shooting or whatever. They do carry steel shields, which is nice. Um, Decent armor, but not great, but decent. But I don't know. Maybe if you have a group set to just bowmen, they can probably do some damage. But and I'm not totally dismissing bows. You'll see later, but I personally can't recommend putting these guys on a line. So I will have to move on from them. Not really recommended. Let's see. We have the Polish mercenary riflemen. Now this one's interesting. Their stats are kind of shit. Um, Again, good athletics, but other than that, they do have power draw, but I would not use them with archery personally. Again, for the same reason as before. Now these guys are interesting in that you could kind of develop them into a kind of a skirmisher. Um, Something I've experimented with, and it seems to work kind of well. You probably want to either put them with infantry or put them in like their own separate skirmisher group. But give them a fast loading weapon like a good pistol, and combine them with a shield and saber, and they perform kind of like net yags or something like that. The infantry that will get a few shots off before they go into the fray. Once they kill their target, in melee combat, they'll probably load another round and start shooting at other people at close range, which is what the pistol's designed for. It's not very strong, not super accurate, but it's meant for close range. It's meant for quick loading, etc. These guys can be interesting. They're They get okay firearms for long range, and they're heavily armored, so they'll survive well enough. But I think it's worth trying them out with a good pistol and putting them in with infantry. Um, Not great infantry stats, but the fact that they're heavily armored could save them. It's worth a try. It comes with at least some recommendation. Moving on. Now here's where we get to a personal favorite of mine and Jack's. And really, to be fair, I have to give credit to Jack's All Jack for really going in depth with the European mercenary riflemen. Um, Lovingly referred to as Doom Troopers. They get heavy armor, they still get the halberd, and they get Miquelette muskets, which aren't as good as the ones the Cossacks get, but they're very good rifles all the same. These guys are great for raiding castles. Whereas the Cossacks, you don't want to put them up the ladder unless you really have to. These guys are just fine going up the ladders or defending the top of the ladder. With their halberds, they're going to reach out and really touch somebody, easily gun people down on the walls. They serve as great line infantry. Um, like cavalry will charge them and have a very hard time breaking them apart. They're tough. Um, if you're looking for the best, you know, I don't know how to say this. Just it's gonna come down to using Cossacks or using these guys, and these guys are more heavily armored, better for sieges and stuff like that. So it's hard to not recommend these guys. They're not the best shooters. In fact, if you look at their stats, the rest most of them are kind of crap. Their firearm skill is good. Um, Heavily armored Doom Troopers, highly recommended. These guys are fun. You can do a lot with just a bunch of these guys. They can do it all. Excellent troops. Moving on though. Now we come down to Muscovite riflemen. These guys are interesting. The Muscovites really are just all around good. They're not, except for their infantry, they're not particularly great at anything, but they don't suck at anything. You can go different couple of directions with these guys. These guys are fine. They have decent enough armor. You can also equip them with a steel shield and the same club as the infantry, or you can go a different route. And this is where they get interesting. They have so many different melee options. They get decent enough muskets. They get wheel locks, which are fine. They're not Miquelette, but they're fine. And by the way, if I'm pronouncing Miquelette wrong, let me know. It's Miquelet, I think. Miquelette. Sorry, it's probably like Miquelet or something like that. Um, Again, good iron flesh. These guys are tough. You can give these guys the same club and shield. You could give them this poleaxe that they have, which is good for cleaving through shields and pretty good when cavalry decide to stick around and fight for a bit. Or you can give them the Sovnia, which is a sort of glaive type weapon. It can be used for it's about equal footing in both slashing and thrusting, so it gives them some interesting flexibility there. And they're one of the few, in fact, they might be the only riflemen that actually have higher melee stats than marksman stats. So yeah, these guys are infantry are interesting. I would I would recommend them too. I would recommend any Muscovites. They're all good. If you're gonna go with just one nation, um, I would have to pick either the Muscovites or the Swedish. But yeah, these guys are good. Moving on. Let's see. Now we're down to cavalry. Things get a little interesting here because I don't think there's any wrong answer when it comes to the cavalry. All of them are good for different reasons. I'll explain why. Okay, Cossacks. Not great fighters. I think they had like the lowest melee stats of all the cavalry. Iron Flesh and Power Striker, they're there. However, they have good riding skill and good shooting from horseback. Since all cavalry can be equipped with a ranged weapon in the game, um, this can make Cossack or any cavalry good for just about any role, whatever you want to make them for. Cossacks in particular make excellent light cavalry. They'll ride fast, and they have access to Miquelete carbines, which are the best guns you can use on horseback, aside from the double Dutch pistol, but they can't get that. Um, their melee weapon selection sucks. Their best weapon is this mace thing they got here. Even though it's cheap and weak, you may want to consider giving them a cavalry lance, since they're kind of hit and run guys. Yeah, use these guys as light cavalry. They're good. Uh, yeah, let's move on. Now let's come to the one time I can recommend a bow. Again, light cavalry. Um, give them a lance. Give them a steel shield. And the fast reloading of the bow makes them very nice to use against lightly armored troops or to just harass the enemy in general. Their stats are pretty shit melee wise, but they are if a I don't know if you can couch cavalry lances. I'm not sure, but if they can, this makes them very interesting units to use. Probably the least recommended of the cavalry. However, um, I think these guys do have some potential use. They're going to be shit in sieges, but they're going to be very very fast on horseback, and I think the bow is a good harassing weapon when it comes to horseback. So it's these guys are fine. You could do worse than this. I'm not sure which nation could do worse, but these guys have a use. Don't give them a gun. Give them a bow. They make for interesting harassment units. Let's move on. So as you can probably tell, the Tatars are probably the worst mercenaries to use overall. The Polish. These guys are. They're probably the least interesting. Good armor. Again, they have shields. You can give them a lance or a cavalry lance, or you can give them the good sabers they have. Excellent melee stats though. They actually perform well as heavy cavalry. The Iron Flesh is kind of shit at first. It gets better. Same for Power Strike. Um, Personally, I would give them a saber, and instead of a carbine, I would give them a pistol. They're one of the few that actually get the good pistol, so they can just uh, reload quickly on the go and gun down people. They'll probably be the quickest of your heavy cavalry, or at least should be. Recommended very highly, in my opinion. Let's see, we got European, the Doom Riders. These guys are heavily armored, excellent melee stats, even good firearm stats, decent shape from horseback. These guys are excellent heavy cavalry. If you want to go all or nothing, these guys are it. Between the Miquelete carbines and they get good broadswords. They have no shield, but yeah, these guys are. It's basically the mercenary equivalent of the Swedish Riders, which, if you've ever played Fire and Sword, you know that Swedish Riders are a pain in the ass. These guys are awesome, and their stats only get better. Their skills are decent at first. Proficiencies are excellent. Highly, highly recommended. And now we have the Muscovite cavalrymen. Again, there's a couple different ways you can go with these guys. You can give them the steel shield and a one-hander, or you can give them the Savnia. They can't use the poleaxe on horseback, but the Savnia gives them thrusting and slashing ability. It's an interesting weapon to use. I like using the Savnia myself. Good melee skills again. Not as good at proficiencies, but they're great all rounders. They get okay. They can do well enough with either archery or firearms. It's fairly close, at least in the beginning. I forget what it looks like later on. So if you wanted to, you could probably get away with using a bow on these guys too, if you wanted to. It depends on how you want to use them. They're kind of mid-level cavalry. They're not light, not heavy. They're all right. They're probably the least interesting of the Muscovite troops, but they're still very, very good. These guys are highly recommended. Okay, now that we've seen all that, It's time to see how these guys look once they're fucking elite. Honky Kong elite. All right. After resting for a number of days, everybody was elite. And now let's take a look again at everybody, even these sacks of shit. Um, Good Iron Flesh and pretty decent Power Strike. Even their proficiencies have improved. If you get them all the way to elite, they're okay, but they still have no shield, no good two-hander. I cannot recommend these guys personally. I can't see them surviving to elite anyway. Um, oh shit, I forgot the rearranger. God damn it. Oh well. Okay, we'll do it this way. These guys, they are shit for Iron Flesh and Power Strike. The proficiencies are fine enough, but they just don't really have any redeeming qualities, really. Um, if it wasn't for the shield, these guys would be worse than the Cossacks now. Cannot recommend. Polish infantry. These guys didn't get a big Iron Flesh upgrade, but they have excellent Power Strike. They're really good for laying the smackdown with somebody. Still good athletics, good proficiencies. These guys are okay. These guys are about your mid-level infantry, I'd say. I'd recommend them over the other two. So you got some options. European infantry. There we go. These guys didn't get a whole lot better. They have the best proficiencies. Skills are all right. Um, that's really about it. Really, it comes down to choosing between these guys and the Polish as your second choice for infantry. Depends on whether you want the more powerful halberd or if you want to play it safer and have a short range weapon with the shield. It's down to preference. I mean, this is all personal opinion, but still. And the Muscovite. I thought the cavalry wasn't there. Holy shit, these guys are awesome. 8 Iron Flesh. I mean, yes, the strength is slightly randomized, but holy shit, 70 hit points with the steel shield, good power strike, excellent proficiencies. Um, I will just say this now: you're stupid if you don't use. If you're going to use infantrymen, you're stupid if you don't use the Muscovites. They're unless you really love that halberd. Um, Definitely take these guys over the Polish. Unless you're in love with the halberd, take these guys over the Europeans. Yeah, Muscovite infantry, don't fuck with them. They're awesome. They'll survive a bullet barrage. These guys are your Spartans. Use them now. Okay, on to the riflemen. These guys were already good. Now they're even better. They're excellent Iron Flesh, so they can actually take a. If a lone sniper round manages to hit them, they will survive. 120 firearm skill. Normally, marksmen or riflemen don't get very high skills even in the respective field anyway, but these guys do. These guys are excellent shots. Use them as backline snipers, marksmen, whatever you want to call them, units. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And they can take a shot. What do you know? Now, the way to interpret this one is, again, I still highly recommend them as like skirmisher infantry due to both high power strike and pretty good iron flesh, and coupled with the athletic skill, yada yada yada. Decent melee skills. They're up to 90 firearms, which is pretty good. I would use them with the pistol, but they can do fine on a back line or something like that. Or if you want to give them a carbine instead, better gun, but it's longer to reload. I personally prefer the pistol for a role like that. Make these guys into infantry. You might be pleasantly surprised. Moving on. European. Our Swedish Doom Troopers. They didn't get too much in the way of skills, but their firearms skill is even higher than before. Second best shots, I think. And wait, did I skip over? I skipped over the Tatar. I think. Yeah, I'll have to go back to that. Nothing fantastic skill wise, but they're still heavily armored. They still have a halberd. They still have a Miquelette musket, and they have good firearms skill. You could do way worse than these guys. These Swedish Doom Troopers are awesome. Back to the Tatars because I'm a fucking idiot. Again, ignore the horse. Um, they're shooting from horseback. Don't put them on a horse. In fact, don't really put them anywhere. Is even their archery isn't that great. It's like it's even below Swedish riflemen as far as their firearm skill versus this archery skill. Their proficiencies are okay. They do have good power draw, and you can give them a good bow, but unless you make a contingent of nothing but bowmen, I can't recommend these guys even now. No power strike, no iron flesh. So when they run out of arrows, they're just gonna get murdered. I had to get a drink. Uh, cannot recommend. I'm sorry. Sorry, Tatars. And Muscovite riflemen. Yeah, holy crap, these guys are tough. Again, Poleaxe, Sovnia, or one-hander and shield combo. All of them are good. Good power strike, excellent iron flesh. They even have a good amount of power draw if you really want to make them archers. Like they have less proficiency and one less power draw, but they're a lot tougher than Tatar archers. So if you really want to use archery, probably use these guys. At least then they could fight. No shield skill, unfortunately. Uh, Good, excellent melee proficiency. Maybe these guys are the best. I don't know, as far as riflemen go. Muscovites are awesome. Highly recommend. I wouldn't use these as your main, shooters or whatever, but these guys make for excellent skirmishers. Maybe if you paired them with, you know what? I'll say, give these guys a bow if you really wanna. Give them the mace and shield, and pair them up with the pistol using Polish marksmen, and you can have some excellent skirmishers. Worth a try. I like them. And that's actually it. And now for the cavalry. This is where it gets interesting. Now these guys, despite not being marksmen, have the high shooting from horseback, excellent riding skill. They are so damn fast. Good iron flesh, good power strike. All of a sudden, these guys have turned into badasses. They're still not heavy, and they can't carry a shield or anything. But with the good carbines, and if you give them like a lance, or if you really insist, you can give them a saber, so they can have a one-hander with better range. Um, these guys make excellent, excellent, excellent light cavalry. Use them unless you want to go all heavy, of course. But these guys will outrun just about anybody. They're fucking awesome. Moving on. Tatar. How much better have you guys gotten? Yeah, these guys are even faster if you believe that. Good shots from horseback. For actual cavalry, good archery skill. Okay, melee stuff. For an elite, it's pretty weak. But the fact that they have 4 power draw, they make good bow users on horseback. Definitely in a light cavalry role. If you really like bows, pair these guys with the Cossacks. Otherwise, just if you want just light cavalry, just use the Cossacks. Sorry, Tatars, you guys have kind of struck out. They do have shields, so they are tougher, slightly better armor. And were they better with melee? I don't know. I don't think they are. Not good choices for melee weapons. Maybe give them a lance. Tatars, you guys have kind of struck out. Your cavalry has some use. Other than that, it's hard for me to recommend. Polish cavalry. Heavily armored. Pretty decent melee stats. Proficiencies. Pretty decent shots from horseback. Again, give them pistols or carbines. I suggest pistols for them. And they're good heavy cavalry. Not much else to say. And they get a shield. Yeah. let's move on. Uh, the Swedish Doom Writers. Um, they don't very good all rounders. Not anything particularly special. Um, except for the proficiencies. Like, this stuff is okay. You get better shots or better riders from the Cossacks. But these guys are fairly tough. Not as tough as the Cossacks, surprisingly. But these guys also have better armor. But these guys are excellent shots from horseback and excellent melee skills. Great heavy cavalry. It's gonna be hard finding something that can survive a charge of these assholes. Highly recommended. And now the Muscovites. This also partially depends on choice of weapon between the Savnia and a one-hander and a shield. But these guys are tough. These guys are actually weaker. Wait, not paying attention to the strength stat? These guys have one less iron flesh than their riflemen. I don't remember. Good power strike. These guys I think have the best melee stats. I think. They're a little slower, not as good of a shot. If you really want to use bows, put them on these guys. They make good mid to heavy cavalry. You can give them their guns aren't as impressive as like the Cossacks or the Swedish, but I'm really sorry about that loud noise. A semi was passing by and I've got the window open. There's a lot of different ways you can go with the Muscovites. They're very, very flexible, tough. Yeah, that's really all there is to say about that. And that's a wrap, folks. That was my explanation of all the troops from recruit to elite. Overall impressions: stay away from Tatars. Um, Cossacks, either give them a sniper rifle or give them a very fast horse. Don't let them fight anything unless it's just a drive-by or ride-by. The Polish make for heavy anything. Swedish make for heavy anything. And the Muscovites are probably the best all around. They have so many different options for equipment that they can do a lot of things, and their stats are very balanced. So and again, it's not like you can't succeed if you take an all-Tatar force. It's just you're going to have to rethink your tactics. In a world that uses mainly firearms, you probably also want to use firearms as well. Though there is some merit to using a bow. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. There is some use. If you get your power draw really high, and with high proficiency, you're going to be doing better with a bow than you would a gun. You'll have twice as much ammo. You'll be firing a lot faster. With a good power draw and whatnot, it's easy to pick off, during a siege, pick lightly armored troops off a ladder and just rack up the kill count very quickly. So, yeah, I'm sure it was a very boring video, but to anybody that's a fan of Fire and Sword, I hope you found this useful. To anybody looking to get into Fire and to Mountain Blade games, especially Fire and Sword in this case, I hope you found this at least enlightening and kind of gets you excited a little bit, saying, "Oh, hey, this could be an interesting game." There's a lot of depth to it, and there really is. Is it better than Warband? It really depends on your point of view, I suppose. But, yeah, analysis done. Thank you, folks, for watching, and see you later.